Hey there, it's Kenny, and welcome to this week's edition of the Yak with Mac. Today, I have a discussion with SMB Coach Marvin Sanchez about leaders who feel anxiety. Listen in. Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to a very special edition of the Yak with Mac. This is Kenny, and I've got one of my guests back. I always ask everybody to come back, and I'm sure they will. This is the first guest that I asked to come back because I want to really just cover one topic today, and Marvin and I are going to have a conversation about that. So I want you to welcome back Marvin Sanchez, SMB Coach. Marvin, welcome back, man. So good of you to give me your time because I know how busy you are these days. So thanks so much for giving me your time. And I really wanted you to come back because I know you and I have been through a lot in our careers. We still go through a lot in our careers in terms of really having that pressure to really do well. And I want to start here, though, because you're down there in Texas. Last night, Baylor wins the NCAA basketball championship. I'm sure they're celebrating down there.
Oh, yeah.
And what an amazing story, I think, because now it happened in like 2002, 2003, that a lot of people aren't aware of what had happened at Baylor way back then and Coach Dave Bliss. And so you'll see the tie-in a second because I think we as leaders, if we don't really handle our pressure and anxiety that we might feel, right, we might do some things, and this is an extreme case, but we may make some really short-sighted decisions like Dave Bliss made back in 2003. So real quick, there was a player who went missing, Patrick Dennehy. This is on the basketball team. And after a few days, tragically, he's found killed, and I believe he was found in a lake somewhere, and he was shot. And it's just an awful tragedy all these years later. And so as it turned out, he was shot and killed by a teammate named Carlton Dotson, who had some mental issues, most certainly, but they had some sort of personal dispute that wound up that way. But Dave Bliss was doing a lot of things that was totally against NCAA rules back then. He's having players that were getting paid under the table, things like that. And as word started to get out that Carlton Dotson might be under investigation for this, what Dave Bliss wanted to do, the last thing that he wanted was for NCAA investigators to come around and really look at the program. And so he did what leaders should never do. He asked his players, who would be people that would work for you, right, to actually lie and make things up. But it was such an egregious thing because he asked his players to say that they knew that Patrick Dennehy was a drug dealer, and he was nothing of the sort. None of that was true. But he felt like if they told police that and the NCAA investigators that they would move on, that they wouldn't, investigate the program. Well, as it turned out, one of his players recorded him and sent it to the police, and they wound up investigating the team, and that's how they wound up, arresting Carlton Dotson, who's still in jail to this day for the murder of Patrick Dennehy. But that's an extreme case of the pressure that he felt to win down. Listen, there's no excuse for what he did, but the pressure and anxiety that he felt to win and develop and deliver results for the school led him to do just an awful thing. And the great story is that Scott Drew, he took him all these years to kind of build it up, but Baylor's actually been good for quite some time now under him.
Correct.
And, they just won the championship, but they've been to the tournament quite a few times, and they've sent some really good players to the NBA. So. But anyway, I want to get into that topic because while we may never feel that type of pressure to do something crazy like that, you and I have been there, but we've also known leaders that have done some things short-sighted. So I'm anxious to hear your thoughts on what should leaders do in this day and age, 2021, man. There is so much pressure on leaders in every organization. We're not just talking about retail. We're talking about across the organization. We want to be successful. We want to be number one. But what happens when leaders feel that pressure and they start to get anxious? What are some of your thoughts?
I think the best thing you've pointed out of that entire situation, there's one theme that sticks out to me, and I had to write it down, was integrity. And whenever, and I love these quotes, right? Diamond in the rough, the more pressure you put it, it's going to turn into a diamond. Yes, that's true. But at the same time, there are levels to the amount of pressure you feel, right? There could be, hey, pressure on fire drill, please get this done. That's a level of pressure. Another level of pressure is your job is on the line. Therefore, in your mind, your livelihood's on the line, your future's on the line, and all these things are coming to you, and it's just surmounting. And whenever you're in those situations, it's so, people just think, oh, you took the easy way out, right? But unfortunately, there is no easy way out. That the reason you're in that situation is because in his situation as a coach, he is stuck on, if I don't do this, here's the ramifications. If I do this, here's the ramifications. No matter what, it's a difficult decision. And I love the fact that you said this doesn't tie in just to retail, to care. It doesn't matter which organization. Whenever pressure starts coming and it starts surmounting, a lot of times what gets challenged is your integrity or how you follow through on the process. And in those situations in the past, right, whenever I'll speak for myself, working in sales, working in retail, there is always pressure, right? But there are certain initiatives that come out that it's like it puts an additional level of stress and concern. And you may have someone who's out on a leave of absence. You may have someone who just resigned today. And all those extra things make you wonder, okay, what am I doing wrong here? And what I'll say for myself, but just kind of using this as an exercise for me to look back in time, right? And if I can go back in time and tell myself something, or go back in time and write a letter and tell myself, hey, do these things. What I would say is, one, stay steadfast in the fact that as long as you hold true to having integrity, your team will appreciate that. They will see it. And there was a survey that came out not too long ago. Now, in the survey, they stated that one of the most important things that anyone on any team looks for from their leadership is integrity. That is key. So as long as you understand that, don't let it challenge you, right? But number two, we can't go on these missions. We can't go on these paths alone. We need a support group. We need people to talk to, people to bounce ideas off of. We need to build those trusting relationships with other people and say, hey, I need help here. And it may feel like you're the only one in the world who's going through this, but you're not. It really, surprisingly, I've now worked in the retail side of the organization, the L&D, learning delivery side of the organization, and the care side of the organization. And in each side, there have always been challenges that I've run into. So on the retail side, it was how to be super effective in leading my team and running them. We're within four walls, how to get out of the four walls, how to get activations, how to build the brand, the business growth, entrepreneurship. That was all that. And then when I went to L&D, or learning delivery, I really thought that those things are gone. Now I have new issues, but it wasn't. Because the topic, and you and I spoke about this in the past, the topic that I dealt with as a leadership trainer back then, I guess an FLDC in the T-Mobile world, it really centered around managing myself and also knowing my value. Now, as a manager, I was worried about others, but what ends up happening is at some point in that situation, when someone on your team creates something that can affect everyone, then it starts questioning your value on yourself. And it starts questioning, how can I maneuver through this? How can I what can I do to save this, right, and resolve this? And now in the care organization, where it's a little bit of both. I have my own team, but at the same time, I always keep in mind my value. I always keep in mind how to manage myself effectively so that I can be the best leader to my team, and how to share these messages with them. And I'm realizing, now that I have a support system, there is no challenge too big. So going back in time, right, that first thing would be, hey, have a support system. Doesn't matter where the groups are, right? As long as you're not sharing proprietary information, but just someone to kind of get these feelings out.
Yeah.
The second thing I would say that would have helped, especially back then, is understand that you have been placed in a role and you have a distinct opportunity to make an impact.
Yeah.
And that impact may feel like it's just so much on your shoulders, but sometimes it's good to work with your team and be transparent to some degree, because there's some things we can't roll out and share, but just that transparency is so key. And I'll say, just around the topic of pressure and anxiety, as a leader, for a long time, my biggest issue was not fully understanding myself and how to be my authentic self, which then translated into me not being as transparent, me still wanting to get the best out of my teams. So the third thing I would have told myself back then is make sure you know yourself and also take care of yourself. Are you eating healthy? Are you meditating? Are you working out? What are you doing to take care of your body and nourish it? And for some people, that may be religion, right? That's a certain level of nourishment. For others, that may not be. They may go a different direction. But what's your nourishment? Because ultimately, as long as you have the support from others, as long as you know yourself, and then as long as you truly take care of yourself, I think those are three big steps in reducing or at least alleviating some of the feeling that pressure is creating.
Man, I love everything you said there. And especially the transparency part, because it could just be you and your team. And so then you really could feel isolated, right? If you
Yeah,
don't have an alert circle, which
correct.
I'm blessed to still have a group of people I can always call on whenever I'm feeling something.
Yep.
And so you definitely need that. But let's say you don't have that and it's just you and your team. As the leader, what do you do? And you framed it up perfectly. You can still be transparent. I mean, yeah, it'll be hard to look your team in the face and say, "Listen, guys, if we don't do it this month, no more me." You know,
Yeah.
and that could sometimes be a reality, but you could frame that up different ways, you know, to let
Correct.
your team know, "Listen, guys, we've got to pull together here, and here's the plan." But I think what you said about knowing yourself is, leaders, please, if you take one thing from our talk today, man, take that with you, because you've got to really know yourself. Because how many times, Marvin, and I know it's happened to you, and I'm sure it's happened to me, but how many times where you'll go on vacation and your first day or two, and I know because you came out and told me like 2 days into your vacation, Kenny, you were right. I was a little burnt out. I feel it now. I feel the difference. We sometimes don't even realize that we're not getting enough sleep because we're just programmed to just go and go and go.
And the funny thing, so back then I used to say this to my team, but in all transparency for anyone who's ever been on my team, I never took my own advice on this until now. Now it's different now that I'm actually listening to the advice I used to give. I would tell my team, guys, it's okay to take a mental health day. If you're not feeling well, if you feel burnt out, take a mental health day. And I know that, to your point, once again, I know this is a national podcast, but I'll be transparent. I did burn out in my location, right? Ambulance came, the whole nine, because I couldn't stop nonstop. I did have this mentality that I'm gonna keep going. I kept going to the store for X amount of days consecutively, and at the end of the day, what that experience taught me was that was more harmful for my team than helpful. Yes, in my mind, I'm a workaholic. My team sees how hard I work, and
Yeah.
as great as that is, that comes back now to my point of knowing my value. My value doesn't have to be that I need to be there 100% of the time to produce. How do I get others to fill in the gaps? How do I build them so they can cover me? But also, I can say this now confidently, that hurt the image of those on my team on what it meant to be a leader. I don't want to do that. I can't do that. That's going to burn me out. And no, we have to be able to manage our time more effectively so they can see we can have a work-life balance and lead a team successfully. We can be successful in how we run this business, right? That's one thing that separated my thought. I truly said to myself, I dropped the ball there. If I would have taken care of myself, my team would take care of themselves as well because they understand it. If I would say, hey guys, hit in the gym, anyone want to join me, or anyone want to do let's look at your Apple Watch, let's sync them up, let's make it a competition about it. Those things are healthy, fun ways to build and take care of yourself, but not taking care of yourself is an issue. And I did have a conversation with someone in HR a few weeks back, and she said something so beautifully. She said, many times, people, when they lead teams, it's easier because they don't have to lead themselves. They're just leading a team, so they're worrying for others, but they never worry for themselves. So for me, this conversation on anxiety and the pressure is an external source that's put on you. What you do with it is what leads to how much anxiety you will feel. How whether you're going to have dread, you won't be able to sleep, you won't stop thinking about it. What can you do to challenge your mentality, your mindset, to get yourself out of that? For me, I've learned very recently that whenever I'm feeling anxiety around something going on, my answer to myself is to find a challenge within it. All right, Marvin, I challenge you to maneuver this way, or Marvin, I challenge you not to think as that as your goal. This should be your goal. And then it's like, oh, okay, then I'm not worried about that anymore. Let me go to this. So whenever you're feeling that way, find the next thing. Find the next way to maneuver, because at the end of the day, we control so much of how we feel. And although it may feel like we don't control it, we do. And that's why, not that I want to throw a plug in here, but I do want to throw a plug in here toward the organization. I have to give so much credit to what T-Mobile has. They have so many resources that we had a 35 days of Live Magenta that came out in emails from the HR side, because they had so much information they wanted to share. There was one that I had spoken about recently. It's the virtual therapy with Talkspace.
Yeah, talk about that.
Yeah, so here, just kind of read up some of the talking points. It says it's regular communications via in-app text, voice, or video message. Providers respond daily, 5 days a week, so members don't have to wait for weeks between appointments. No appointment necessary, live video sessions, and provider matching. So this is one small sliver piece that T-Mobile offers to help us not just cope with anxiety, but overcome it and prepare ourselves. Because, Kenny, the one thing that you and I spoke about for a while, and there's something that I loved hearing from leaders, is I would always ask, oh, what's it like to be you, Kenny? What's it like to be in your position? And every leader always said, oh, I go through these things, but essentially I have a different role with my own responsibilities, but I'm still a human. I still go through things that you go through. I still have things that I may have a lot on my plate. I may not have a lot on my plate. So I go through the same things you go through. The difference is that we have different titles and we have different responsibilities within those titles. But it doesn't change the fact that I'm a human, you're a human, and that we both have to take care of ourselves and take care of others. Whether you have a team or don't have a team, stay connected with others and really build lasting relationships. I know that there's that thing that you don't build relationships at work and they don't last, but they do. Some people stay here 21 years. You might know somebody for 21 years. Build those relationships.
Yeah. I mean, no doubt. I want to go back to something you said then, and we don't sometimes realize the influence that we have. And when you humanize yourself day in and day out with your team, it can make those conversations of, hey, I'm feeling a little something,
Correct,
a little bit easier, because then they see you as human, but they maybe have already seen you as human. Because you're right. I think that, your teammate, oh, he's got it all together. She's got it all together. They're look at the job that they have. They've got it all together. I want to share this real quick. The influence that we have, because you mentioned that the team sees what you're going through, and then, why would they want your job? And so I'll never forget, I was having a career discussion with someone in a store, and we were going over a few places for their career to go. And I said, hey, how about assistant store manager and store manager? And you're like, yeah, no, I don't want my manager's job.
I don't want that.
Well, why not? It's a great job. Yeah, I see what she goes through. She just the pressure just kills her. I didn't know it, because she did a good job hiding that from me. That was
Yep.
how I found out. But that was how we were then able to have really good discussion and dialogue. And it turned out that, hey, I'm just, it's not you. You're not throwing too much on my plate. It's the way I'm handling it, which is what you said. What do we do with that pressure? Because that pressure we know is coming, right? We know
Yeah.
that it's going to always be there for one reason or another. It's what we do with it, and then what our teams see what we do with it is so amazing. And if we don't think we're on display all the time, I want to share this really quick story.
Mhm.
I'll never forget. I was asked to do a early morning training at even if you're not in this part of the country, the Flatiron Building in New
Yes.
York. Everybody's seen that in movies and stuff like that. So we have a very busy store that's still there in that building. And so it had a basement where you could do some training at. You know this. I don't know why I'm telling you,
Yes.
but you know this. But anyway, I'll never forget. I got there a little bit before 8. We were supposed to start at like 8:30, and most of the team was already standing outside except the manager that was supposed to open that morning. And so I'm out there just making small talk, and I'm saying, his name was Brian. He's not with the company anymore. But I said, hey, what time does Brian get here? And they all kind of chuckled. I was like, what's so funny? So one of them told me, Kenny, we know Brian. He's real consistent. He's gonna get here exactly 8 o'clock. You're gonna see him coming up the steps. The train station's right there. He's going to be holding in his hand a coffee. The coffee's black with 2 sugars. And he's going to be holding a plain buttered bagel in his other hand. It's going to be exactly 8 o'clock. And he's going to say, hey, good morning, guys. And he's going to put his keys in the door and do the alarm. Sure enough, man, exactly 8 o'clock. Here comes Brian up the steps. He said good morning to me first because obviously I was different. And said, good morning, guys. And I said, hey, Brian, before you open the door, your coffee, black with 2 sugars? It's like, yeah. Plain butter bagel in your other hand? Yeah. How'd you know? I was like, well, I'll tell you later. And I remember after the training, I came upstairs and I told him, I was like, it's a metaphor there because do you realize how much your team watches you and they know exactly what your every movement is? That was just a small thing that they noticed that he did every single day.
Mhm.
And it's a good thing, right? Because he's on time
A
every
great
day.
thing.
Right. Yeah. But, if we think that our team is not going to notice that we're feeling anxious, think
They
another
know.
thought because they know they watch us. They watch leaders 100% of the time, as they should. And we're not going to be perfect. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to fall
Yep.
short every single day. But we build up those points in the bank, and then we're able to have those human conversations, right?
Correct.
And because they watch us every single day, and sometimes they worry about us. I mentioned to you where I remember there was a point in my career where I didn't like the leader I had become. But how did I realize that I had become that leader? It was because some very trusted leaders that worked under me
Give
took me out to
feedback.
lunch and looked me in the eye and said, you're changing and not for the good. We noticed you do this. I was like, you notice that? Yeah. You used to do this, but now you do this, and this. We notice the pressure is getting to you. So I think that we've got to be able to have those outlets and
And
be able to talk to people. And here at T-Mobile, we've got so many different outlets. You
correct.
know?
And one thing I do want to point this out, just because for certain parts of the organization, we're still to some degree in a remote environment, or there may be those
Yeah.
who are not seeing their team every day. And I want to give 100% of credit, which if she didn't want me to share, I am so sorry. But there is a closed loop manager out of Charleston, South Carolina. Her name is Portia. And she and I had a fantastic call, and there was something she shared with me that really tied into transparency, but also, Kenny, the other message that you had in that story was the consistency. Two major keys, and what she shared was her team. There's something she does, and I don't have the exact details of how she does it in her Slack channel, but in her Slack channel, she has there's different emojis that are tied to your name, and they share how you're feeling for that day. And in her sharing that, she said That way she can always see from all her experts. So she's a manager, so she has coaches under her, and then each coach has their own team.
Right.
So essentially, like in the retail side, like a district manager or a market manager, right? And she says they would always put how they're feeling, and she would see it in one view because now she can look in Slack and see it all. Okay, here's how they're feeling. But if that was where it ended, I've seen that done here and there. She also puts how she feels as an
Wow.
emoji. And
Wow.
people have reached out to, hey, I see you're not doing too well. What's going on? And
Wow.
that's her experts who have a coach, and then she's here, and there's still a level of transparency, even at the manager level,
Wow.
where the community knows, hey, she's not doing well. Why? Because they know she is human. They know that hey, she's going through it. How did you overcome that feeling last week? Oh, here's what I did. You know what? I can overcome this. And I think that's the next piece. It doesn't matter if you're seeing someone every day. It doesn't matter if you're virtual. It doesn't matter the circumstances. The key to our success as an organization is making sure that we are as transparent as possible, really building off of that consistency. Being a consistent leader, I've heard from some great leaders, some great talking points on consistency and how that is what leads to success. That would be the next thing. But then I want to just touch back at the beginning, what we spoke about, how to get through the anxiety and also how to overcome this pressure. Build that support system, that community that you can go to. And if you feel like you don't have that, go to places like Talkspace and talk it through. Or at least try to make sure that you are, in any way you want, reach out to your trainer and really, hey, how can I develop myself? I really want to put this into my IDP. I want to talk more about how to get myself, to elevate myself to being better, right? So are you taking care of yourself and your body and in your mind? And if you do those things, it'll be so much easier for you to be transparent on what you do because you know that you're not leading your team just through this organization, but through life and how to
Through
be
life.
better for
Yeah.
their own teams. Or our teams they might do side projects with different organizations and now they're leading them and we don't see them, but now our impact is felt elsewhere. And that's exactly why, once again, this topic is near and dear to my heart. It's something that it truly makes a difference every day. And a lot of times people just overlook it because they think, oh, it's just a hard day. I'm going to overcome this. It's not just about you. It affects others. And that's the one thing that I definitely want to make sure that resonates.
Marvin, I can't, I'm not adding anything to that. This will be a great way to end. And I so appreciate all of your thoughts, all of your insights, and all of your sharing of some of the resources. I'll put it all in the notes.
Yes.
There was one other article that we didn't get a chance to touch on, but that's okay. I'll put the name of the article from the Harvard Business Review in there that really goes into what leaders should do when they feel that anxiety.
Yeah.
It's such an important topic, and I know deep in my core and from having conversations, and I know you from having conversations, that there are a lot of leaders that feel that pressure and just don't
Yeah.
know what to do with it. So
Correct.
hopefully you heard some great tips here today. I'll wrap it all up in our notes. And Marvin, I don't even have to ask you. I know you'll come back.
Whenever you say, sir.
Yeah,
I'll be here.
we'll have a discussion on some more topics, but I wanted to try this differently just to hit on this one topic. And man, oh man, what great advice that you gave. So it'll be most definitely impactful for our leaders out there. So we'll wrap it up, folks. We'll be back next week with another edition of the Yak with Mac. For now, this is Kenny and Marvin with the Yak with Mac. We'll talk to you next week.
Have a good one.